Hi, do we have anyone else in Boots? I don't see Boots. And I don't think anybody's in there. So I think Cupid is our only friend who is here. Your mini friend, 3 years old. Okay, this cat is out of the cage. So I don't know. Okay, this is Boots. Where? Oh, this is Boots. Hi, Boots. And the dogs. Yeah, this one reminds me of
Hey guys, welcome to a new vlog. The theme this week is reading the shortest historical fiction book on my TBR according to Goodreads. I have the weekly TBR right here that we are going to be going through. First we had the book that I'm starting my days with. Did not get to it today, but that is Devotions by Mary Oliver. Basically a ton of nature poetry. The main focus of the vlog is The Dead Lake by Hamid Ismailov, which is a piece of translated fiction. It is translated from the Russian by Andrew Bromfield. It is a haunting tale about the environmental legacy of the Cold War. Yurzan grows up in a remote part of Soviet Kazakhstan where atomic weapons are tested. As a young boy, he falls in love with the neighbor's daughter, and one evening, to impress her, he dives into a forbidden lake. The radioactive water changes Yurzhan's. He will never grow into a man, while the girl he loves becomes a beautiful woman. So that is our main focus this week. I did start a new mood read last night. I never read the description of these before going in, but this is The Last House on the Street by Diane Chamberlain. It is a story when two women a generation apart find themselves bound by tragedy and an unsolved decades-old mystery. I'm about 10% into that. And lastly, we have the ebook that I've been reading forever. I'm at 60-some% into this, and that is Wayward by Chuck Wendig. We have had a pandemic wipe out the majority of the population, and this is showing how society rises again after such a catastrophic event. I don't know if I need to turn on the studio light or not, because I think sunset is in like 5 minutes, but with time change, I'm just gonna have to discover what lighting works best for the vlogs. But I got to 54% in The Dead Lake by Hamid Ismailov, which is 67 pages read. This is like a high 2-star right now, as I do like some aspects of this, but it's not doing a whole lot for me. We are going to go through the tabs. I'm doing all the tabs in one color, just trying something new, why not? First section, I didn't know if this was an author's note or a prologue, but it is a prologue because I was really confused by that. But that is when we first meet our main character, and he's 27 but looks a lot younger than he appears. Like, he looks like a child. Thinking of when we were at the back of this, that he must have the atomic waste that he got involved with made him stop growing, and he stayed like that age forever. I don't know though, because I do have a little bit more to add to that, which we will get to. Something that is fascinating, how it said this is a remote part of Soviet Kazakhstan. Literally, they are the only two who live in Karashagan. They're both grandfathers work for like the railroad. They do go to school though, but I think it's just they have to, you know, when the parents were like, I used to walk to school through the snow and everything. They rode a donkey to school. And for a time period, I think this would be in like the 70s, early 80s. There's not been an exact year. I'm just basing that on Soviet pop culture references that I've looked up. I have kind of a backstory on the conception of what's his name? Yurzhan, where there might be sci-fi elements, because I do not know what nuclear waste does, but I don't think it does in Immaculate Conception. So I think his mom saw something that she wasn't supposed to see and probably got tortured and assaulted, and that is where he came from, because nobody knows who the father is. And after she came home from this experience, she hasn't uttered a word, and it's been years, so nobody knows who Yurzhan's father is. So I don't know if there's a sci-fi element, but I think it is the second theory that I said, which is very sad. I am having, my biggest issue is I'm having a really hard time following this. It is very fast paced, where I'm just like, whoa, sporadic is the word I was trying to think of. And then we have folklore parts where I'm kind of confused with that, with the grandmas who are telling stories, where I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what these names are. I don't know. That was confusing me. And then I would like there to be a family tree, which I guess I could make my own, but we had the two households, or two houses like side by side. There's the grandparents in both, then the parent generation, and then our kids, Yoshan Azlu, I guess is how you would say her name. I'm not seeing the name on the page, so I can't give you a pronunciation, but the two kids. There's 3 generations in each house, and they will just be like grandpa or granny Ubarzin, and I would just like to know, okay, is that the guy's grandma or the girl's grandpa? I get confused. The last tab is literally just the title of the book getting mentioned, and that is where we ended the day in the Dead Lake. It is Tuesday, and we are on the struggle bus today. Woke up, sore throat, congested. Literally only on this side I'm congested. The pollen is in full force here. It is officially hit, and it's having its impact on me. Next, on my way home today, I got my finger, yes, my middle finger, stuck in the window as it rolled up, so I'm pretty bruised up. If you don't like bruises, double tap the side. Yeah, so it really hurt when it happened. I screamed. But it's just a little sore now because I did ice in my ice packs back there. I have a lot of junk back there. I have tissues, ice pack, reading materials. It's a mess in here, so I'm just praying to like all the gods this is just allergies and that I'm not getting sick again, because I do not want to be down for like 2 weeks again with was the rhinovirus or whatever that I had back that made me not finish Vlogmas. So we're knocking on the wood because we do not want that. But I did finish the Dead Lake, so we are going to go through Cobb Howl. Let me get it. The lighting is so good right now. It's almost 7 o'clock. It's 6:50, about 6:49 right now. Let me get my pen, and yeah, I think y'all can see Freddy kind of blends in with the blankie. But let's go crazy till we see the sun. We start with characters first, and the characters, I didn't have an issue with Yurzhan, our main character. I liked making theories about him, but I didn't have strong feelings towards him whatsoever. I didn't have any kind of connection to him. And with the side characters, I was really confused because they were all so similar and were not that well developed, so they didn't do a whole lot for me. But as I didn't hate them, none of them made me feel like throwing the book. We will give them a 2-star. Now let's talk about the atmosphere, which was definitely my favorite part. We're gonna give it a 4-star. It's really good. As it says, a haunting tale about the environmental legacy of the Cold War. It talks about at the very beginning of the book that Russia, or the Soviet Union, it says between 1949 and 1989, the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, a total of 468 nuclear explosions were carried out, compromising 125 atmospheric and 343 underground blasts. Aggregate yield of the nuclear devices tested in the atmosphere and underground at the test site were in a populated region exceeded by a factor of 2,500 the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima by the Americans in 1945. They were doing these tests, and yes, it is a remote rural area, but a populated area. They were testing nuclear weapons, and we are just seeing the impact that it has on these people's bodies, the animals and land around them. That was so interesting to read. Now, I would have liked some more world building on the Cossack culture because I know next to nothing. I've watched travel videos. Noel Phillips is the one who made me so interested in Central Asia because that was just somewhere I'd never really known about till I watched his videos, and I thought it was all just really interesting, the culture and everything there. So it's one that I don't know a whole lot about, and I think most people in the West aren't going to know a whole lot about. This was intended for Russian audiences. I'm sure they probably know more than I do. It might be a me problem, but I'm still knocking off to do a 4 instead of a 5, because like they would go into the like folklore, religious, maybe. I think the characters are Muslim, but now the writing is another 2-star, because there were some excerpts that I liked. There was a line that I marked today. Let me see if I can get to this tab. After all, he had already lived through everything that is given to a man: the warmth of family, the happiness of love, the infatuation of hopes, the bitterness of disappointments, the music of the soul, and the fear of oblivion. Really like that line. Thought it was powerful. I didn't hate the writing, but a lot of it wasn't for me because I was very confused while reading it. It was very fast-paced, sporadic, and I didn't have a lot of time to adjust to the story itself. Plot, I will give a 3. We are seeing a young man trying to find out his place in this world. I think that's the ultimate theme here. We do have this right here that says, like a Grimm's fairy tale, this story transforms an innermost fear into an outward reality. We witness a prepubescent boy's secret terror of not growing up into a man. We wander in a beautiful, fierce landscape like no other in Western literature, and by the end of Yersan's tale, we are awestruck by our human resilience in the face of catastrophic man-made follies. I do just think the overall, the environmental stuff and all, very fascinating, and I did like that, and seeing just this young person come of age in that kind of place, I thought that was fascinating. Intrigue, we are going to give a 2 because again, this book didn't do a whole lot for me. Logic, we will give a 3 because I do think a lot of it made sense, but I did have some confusion. And then enjoyment, a 2 because this didn't do a whole lot for me. So we are going to do the math and find out what I'm rating this book. This will be getting a 2.5. It is a good book, but it's not, it didn't do a whole lot for me. I do think it has some positives to it, but it's not, I'm not, oh my gosh, the bees hit in the window. It's not one that I'm telling you to rush to go pick up, but if any of this sounds intriguing to you, maybe see, I don't know if this is being a library or not. This is very like an obscure piece of literature that I have here when I was just looking for books set in Central Asia. I don't know if you're gonna be able, how easy it will be to find this or not, but yeah, if it sounds intriguing to you, which I do know a lot of people who are fascinated by the Soviet times and all that, so I do think there is definitely an audience for this book, and I do think some of my faults with this book could fall on the translation. That's my review for The Dead Lake, the shortest historical fiction book on my TBR according to Today. I'm at a weird angle because Fred is stretched out at a weird angle. I get in my usual spot unless I squish him. And I don't want to do that because this is my man, my little boy. We're not doing that. I am about to start the nonfiction pick of the month. Look how big this book is. I don't know how long it actually is. Okay, about 500 pages it looks like. Chapter 23, or was it 33? My bad. 524 pages in length. I am going to be doing the audiobook, and literally this is the last book on my TBR. This I have 20 something days, 20 days to read this, which is more than enough. Knock on wood, we don't want things to go crazy, but we live in a crazy world. Never know what might happen. But let me tell y'all what Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson is about. He was history's most creative genius. What secrets can he teach us? The author of acclaimed bestsellers on Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and Benjamin Franklin brings Leonardo da Vinci to life in this exciting new biography. Drawing on thousands of pages from Leonardo's astounding notebooks and new discoveries about his life and work, Walter Isaacson weaves a narrative that connects his art to his science. He shows how Leonardo's genius was based on skills we can improve in ourselves, such as passionate curiosity, careful observation, and an imagination so playful that it flirted with fantasy. Now, last month, the biography that I read was my favorite book that I read in February. We will have to see if this will be my favorite book of March. Hopefully it will. We're always looking for great books. So far, Monstrilio has been the best book I've read, and that was a 3.85, which goes in as a 4-star on all the websites, or on Goodreads. It goes in as a 4-star. Sorry, math, not my strong suit. Maybe I'll learn something in this book. I was really just stunned by the print of this book, how it's in color. I've actually seen that painting. That's the only painting of his that is in the United States, which that's crazy to think about. I've seen The Last Supper as well, which is right down there. I saw that in Italy. Can't take pictures in there or anything. It's just, it's an experience. An experience. But I'm going to be getting into this in about 5 minutes here. But I did want to do an update. I'm going to be annotating. We'll go over the notes later. Breathe with me, people. Breathe with me. Okay. I got to 11% in Leonardo da Vinci, and today is the day where I'm not reading at like full capacity because we do have a hockey game at 7. We typically don't have like weekday hockey games, but this is a makeup game from the snow day we had last month, 2 months ago almost. I'm not going in person. It's in Georgia, but I'm going to be watching. As I said, I got to 11%, so this should take me about 10 days to get through, which seems about right for a 500-page book. Now I did dog ear a page up here, or a section more so, because it has a list of our characters. Cesare Borgia's in alphabetical order. Francis I, Pope Leo X, Michelangelo, Ludovico Sforza. So we have a lot of different ones. Then the currency in Italy in the 1500s, and that's just a note on the cover, so that's not really important. And then the time periods of his life. We also have this timeline that has his science discoveries, his life. Then the blue is what's going on in world history, and then the red is for his art of when certain creations were made. I think that is just a good reference. If I'm annotating a book and it has like a main character list, I always tab it, or if it has a family tree, always tab it, just so I can easily go back and forth. And I am following along with the audiobook, and on Audible anyway, you can click and it will take you to a PDF so you can see the timeline, the pictures, whatever, which this is a book about a man who was an artist. I do think that is important to see his artwork. But literally in the introduction, I'm underlining stuff on the first page. Thus he became the archetype of the Renaissance man, an inspiration to all who believe that the infinite works of nature, as he put it, are woven together in a unity filled with marvelous patterns. A lot of this the writer Walter Isaacson has talked about with his other biographies, Benjamin Franklin and Steve Jobs, who he mentions, of how art and science just go together so well. And I do think there is art in everything in this world, which it's crazy to think about, because you could just be like, science, like how in the world is that connected to that? But patterns and everything, I just think there's art and beauty in everything in this world. Next I have, together they served his driving passion, which was nothing less than knowing everything there was to know about the world, including how we fit into it. I tell y'all that all the time. That is my goal in life, is to know everything, and to learn everything that there is possible to learn. And somebody else, I'm like, yes, Leonardo, he gets it. We are still in the introduction, and yeah, I have a lot over here. With Leonardo, a lot of contemporaries at the time say, in addition, he was a charming conversationalist and a lover of nature, renowned for being sweet and gentle to both people and animals. But also, his contemporaries did consider him to be friendly and gentle, as we both spoke of, but Leonardo was at times dark and troubled. He just had a very hard time focusing on one thing because he was interested in so many other stuff. And then a lot of hallucinations, almost mood swings that he was having at his time. And it just goes into the kind of person that he was, of kind of how he would be seen in the modern view. And then I did, and that's where this comes in. The 15th century of Leonardo and Columbus and Gutenberg was a time of invention, exploration, and the spread of knowledge by new technologies. In short, it was a time like our own. That is why we have much to learn from Leonardo. His ability to combine art, science, technology, and humanities and imagination remains an enduring recipe for creativity. So too was his ease at being a bit of a misfit, illegitimate, gay, vegetarian, left-handed, easily distracted, and at times being a heretical. I don't know how you say that. Florence flourished in the 15th century because it was comfortable with such people. Above all, Leonardo's relentlessness, curiosity, and experimentation should remind us of the importance of instilling in both ourselves and our children not just received knowledge, but a willingness to question it, to be imaginative, and like talented misfits and rebels in any era, to think different. Like, I just know he would have loved Montessori. I want to look up Maria Montessori's thoughts of Leonardo da Vinci. There's just so much where I think he would thrive in that kind of setting. But then we get to chapter 1, which is on his childhood. And I didn't realize that he was a bastard. We do know him by his father's last name. I don't know how all that is going to come about because his father, at this point that I'm reading, has not legitimized him. But his father was still a part of his life. It seems from the notebooks that we have of Leonardo da Vinci that his parents did love each other, but his mother was just was basically a peasant. This was in a town called Vinci. At this time period in Florence, there was about 100 families who were rich. Then you have about 5,000 who were middle class, which is like the Da Vinci family were a middle class family. And then you had the peasants below that. They didn't provide a number for that. Florence is a republic at this time, but a republic is used very loosely, but it's not ruled by a monarchy like we see in a lot of places in Europe at this time period. They did co-parenting well, it seems like, which I was kind of shocked by. And it says this was a golden age for bastards, especially among the ruling and aristocratic classes. Being illegitimate was no hindrance. No, it wasn't the same for lower classes. It just wasn't viewed the same. I just never really thought about it because, yes, I do know the Medici they were having kids. Like, they were just out here being hoes. Now I know that in the top classes it wasn't really viewed as that bad, and those kids could be legitimized, but Leonardo's dad didn't really go about it. Why do I have a pink star here? Oh yeah, he writes a lot of stories, very fantastical stories. I never knew that he was also a writer as well. He wasn't really writing and doing art to publish and share his ideas with others, like his mentor, who we will talk about later, was really into doing. But Leonardo was just kind of doing this all for himself, not like in a selfish way, but like a lot of research I do and a lot of stuff I don't go and publish it out there. A lot of my writing I just keep it to myself because it's just fun. And I think that's kind of what he was doing. But the story that he was in a cave, or he was hiking and comes across a cave and found whale fossils, I always think that's so fascinating of what did people in past times think of fossils, because we didn't really know what they were till the 1700s. Now we go into chapter 2, which I think I'm still technically in chapter 2. Yes, I am. It's very long. It's called Apprentice. And Florence at this time really reminds me of San Francisco. We have a lot of art and just humanism, I guess is the word, going on. It says there was no place then and few places ever that offered a more stimulating environment for creativity than Florence in the 1400s, and it just is so different from any other city that I've read. This time period of it just seems like a really good place to be, but I mean, who wouldn't want to be in Italy, right? Is that my last tab? Yeah, that was my last tab. But the guy he is the apprentice to is I can actually go because I have the Verrocchio. I might be mispronouncing that. It's Verrocchio. That's the guy who he's kind of an apprentice to. It kind of reminds me of a fashion house where you have the designer and then you have all these other people under him. That's what it reminds me of, kind of. I don't know if that's a good comparison or not, but that is all for Leonardo da Vinci for the day. To 26%, so I'm over a quarter of the way into the book now. If you wonder with the hockey games, how do I do my mood reads, since they're typically during my reading time? On days that I go to the game, I leave my house at 6:30 and I get ready. It takes me about 15 minutes to get ready for a game day. I read for 30 minutes because that's typically how long I read in my mood reads. Just read for 30 minutes before I get ready in the 5 o'clock hour, and then I read my ebook when I get home. Oh my gosh, this nose, I'm so congested. But some sports fans, y'all, are just babies. Like, I know, like, I'm scared. Like, the people I'm really thinking about, they don't know who I am, but there's just some, I think NASCAR are the whiniest sports fans. Minor league hockey, I've seen some things. We are going to talk about the first quarter of this book. 2 plot lines. We have Ellie in 1965. She is a white student at UNC, which is the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, because other characters in the book didn't know what that was, and I'm like, how do you not know? She is a student there, and she hears about this program called SCOPE. I forget what the abbreviation stands for, but basically it is a lot of students from the North are coming down south to help register Black people to vote, because they do have I think they have the right, but there's just a lot, especially in the southern states, a lot of rings or hoops that they have to get through, and this is to help them ease that process. Now, no southern students have gotten involved with this. I don't like it. Yeah, I don't know how all that works, but Ellie is like, oh my gosh, I have to get involved with this. So that is her storyline. Then we have Kayla in 2010. Kayla is an architect, and she has built this house, the last house on the street, with her husband, and it's their dream house that they're going to raise their family in, but the husband dies in a tragic accident. Now, Kayla is at work one day in her office. She hasn't moved into the new house yet, and she works in Greenville, North Carolina, which is about 30 minutes from the small town that she lives in and where the house is. And this woman comes in who very much, like, she has shades on. She can't really tell what the woman looks like. She has long red hair and is basically threatening Kayla if she moves into that house, that is not a good place to have a house, that she's going to unalive her. So those are our 2 plot lines. I do have a theory on how they're going to connect, but I'm not going to go into that. But I will go through some of my other notes. I know that Reed is Kayla's father. I think there may be just something more to who her parents are, because we haven't met her mom, but the writing is very descriptive. Like, there was one part where Ellie is sitting on the porch, and there is like her godfather, I'm blanking on his name, but he's sitting across from her, and she's like, and the kudzu look like wild animals fighting behind him. Like, why do we need to know that? And these Northerners are, like, scared of kudzu. Like, I never thought kudzu was creepy. I actually quite like it, but it's something that I see every single day, so I don't know. Like, I just don't find it creepy, but, yeah, just very descriptive writing where I'm like, do we need all of these details? Because this is very long-winded reading, but I do want to talk about the character of Ellie. I do feel like there's white savior, like, being the white savior. White saviorism, is that what that's called? I'm sorry, I'm medicated and allergies are going crazy. But because I think now that there is going to be more building on why Ellie is so passionate about getting out there, but so far it was just like her aunt was from New York and was always wanting to save the underdog, that's a quote from the book, and that Ellie is, like, inspired by her aunt to do the same thing. But also she had a classmate who happens to be Black, and she, like, couldn't go to a restaurant to go study with Ellie because segregation. And so Ellie one day gets involved in a protest. All of that, it just seems so surface level. I'm like, I don't really understand why she is wanting to do this, but I do think just with some of the backstory of her childhood, I think we're going to get more layers to that. But she definitely has a hero complex, I will say that. I do think with Ellie's plotline, it's just showing, because we can look at our own timeline about how people's families are so divided with just politics and just the craziness of the world we live in. And I think that is kind of what this book is trying to do, of that Ellie is going against the status quo of being from a small predominantly white town in the South. Everybody's like, no, you don't need to be doing this, we don't think it's a good idea, but they're like, we're not racist, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I just feel iffy with her motives and how they're being written, but we will just have to see where that goes. But that is all for the last house on the street.
It's time for the nightly update. It is Thursday, so last day of the vlog. But I got to, I think it was 23% of the way into Leonardo da Vinci. I read 60 pages today, getting me to chapter 6, which is page 112. I'm reading about 10% a day. Let's see my notes. Some are like really random or just me underlining things that I found interesting. My first note, we talked about yesterday how he was an apprentice to this guy. I said his name yesterday. Verrocchio. But basically they would collaborate, and this was a lot of different artists, not just Leonardo and his master. So they would just collaborate. So one angel was made by Leonardo, the other made by Verrocchio. And I thought that was very interesting. I had never heard about that before, of these pieces of art being collaborations. Just never. I've never heard of any artist doing that. I found that really fascinating. I just did not know that was a thing that was being done. But the one thing with this book that I am not sure about, and is the thing that is the negative while I've been reading this, is we will get these really detailed analysis, like all this is an analysis of this painting, and that can be a bit tedious for me. I didn't really come here to read an analysis of these paintings. I do understand we are trying to understand this guy, Leonardo da Vinci. We have to, somebody's creation, you can learn a lot about them from that. But it's just so thorough that, as I said, it is very tedious for me to read about personally. Whenever Da Vinci, I think, as I told y'all before, I saw this painting a few years ago. I might have shown it in a vlog when I was in Washington. I don't know, because, you know, some paintings you're not allowed to record or anything, but I'm pretty sure I was able to show this. And I did read a historical fiction book on the same thing. It is right here. It is called Da Vinci's Tiger by, the author's last name is Elliot. I actually got that in a subscription box. It's a young adult historical fiction novel. Maybe if you are into Renaissance Italy, you might like that. But this is something I found interesting. He had done in the Baptism of Christ, which was the painting I just showed y'all that was a collab. Leonardo depicts a meandering river flowing from misty mountains and seeming to connect to a human body and soul. With her earth tone dress laced by blue thread, Ginevra is unified with earth and the river that joins them, and we see this in the future with Mona Lisa. Some people do think Ginevra is Mona Lisa because the smile, smirk, whatever you want to call it, is very similar. This author does not think that's the case. I personally don't think that's the case either, but how he relates the earth and the nature to the, I can't think. I'm sorry, I'm so tired today. I know that the medication I'm on can cause drowsiness for my allergies, but so I'm doing really bad at reviewing. The subject of the painting, that's the word I was looking for. So just connecting the art to the subject, I really like that and think that's fascinating. And again, that's something I probably wouldn't have noticed. But with this painting, so if I ever go back to DC, and if any of you are able to go to the museum, this is something to look for. So you stand close enough to the painting at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., you see his fingerprint, Leonardo's, just to the right of Ginevra's jaw, where her ringlets of hair blur into the background. Juniper tree and distinct little spiky sprig juts out. Another can be found behind her right shoulder. So I'm like, where is her right? Like, but I think that's really fascinating that you can see the fingerprint, the thumbprint of a legend like Leonardo da Vinci. That's so cool. And then this is how I said Da Vinci's Tiger. The Ginevra did write poetry, and one of her lines to survive is, "I ask your forgiveness, I am a mountain tiger." Like, yes. Now we're going to chapter 3. I got a book for Christmas that I bought for myself at an indie bookstore in Columbia that I am missing the name of once again. It's in 5 Points. One of my favorite indie bookstores I've ever been to. But this one is talking about how Leonardo, at least 2 times so far, has been like arrested for sodomy. And that is to say that even though Leonardo and a lot of these artists were just,
they weren't scared of being gay. They accepted themselves like they were just gay. They didn't care. But that's not to say that the society around them, as I was talking about yesterday, very open to creatives and everything. The Roman Catholic Church, the Pope, still has a stronghold on Renaissance Italy. Being gay is seen as a sin, and even in favorite works of Leonardo, like Dante's Inferno, Dante does refer to sodomy and being gay as a sin that would leave you in hell. It's not something that was seen as okay or whatever, but it's something that I've learned. Just Leonardo seems just so okay with himself. He knows that he's not the perfect person. He knows that he is a bit of a misfit and outcast, because he is not that, as we talked about, his father didn't legitimize him, and the author thinks that he just knew that Leonardo couldn't be somebody who could sit and do the job as a notary, like, I'm going to use modern standards, that he's not a guy who can sit and do the office job. He has to be out doing his own thing. And, but I got this book at the indie bookstore called Florencer, and that was actually, so indeed l'amor masculino, as Lamazzo quoted Leonardo calling it, was so common in Florence that the word Florencer became slang in Germany for gay. Very interesting. Did not know that. So that chapter, like, kind of intro was talking about his sexuality. Now we have this one that this paragraph, let's read it. Miraculously, one of his missing drawings was found in 2016 when a French doctor was going through some of the artworks that had been collected by his father. That is something that fascinates me so much. We have these old paintings that can be 500 years old. I'm so interested in their journey of how did they, we'll talk about Ginevra's painting. I saw that painting in like 2019, 2018 in Washington, D.C., but it was painted 500 years ago in Italy. Where has it been? Who all did it pass through to get from Italy to Washington, D.C.? I only think that's so fascinating. This was another thing I found fascinating. During this time period, a lot of artists, Renaissance artists, would insert themselves in the painting. So we can go here. Let me go back to the painting. Oh my gosh, how far back? This guy right here, who is looking away from the saint, is Leonardo, that he put himself into this painting of the adoration to the Magi. Is that, yeah, when the Magi come across Jesus at the Nativity. I thought that was super cool, and you can see it in other, like Botticelli, who's my personal favorite artist, and his works as well. I think that's just a little cool Easter egg from back then. And a big theme today has been about Leonardo's portraits. A lot of the time were psychological expositions. Thought that was cool, and that was really like a first with that Ginevra of painting women in just that way of having more of a psychological aspect to them rather than just for religious purposes. Sure, he did do paintings in religious styles, but very interesting. And this one I thought would just feel hopeful for some people out here. So as he approached his 30th birthday, Leonardo had established his genius, but had remarkably little to show for it publicly. So I know a lot of people, I'm 26, that's not old, but I know in those videos where they ask when your birthday is, they would play the Jurassic Park music because I was born in the 1900s. So just know there's still so much life ahead, and tomorrow could be the day you have your big break and everything changes. You never know, because here we are again 500 years later still talking about the man. But now we go to Milan, which is, you know, my favorite place I've ever been. I was just making note of like how far the journey would be between Florence and Milan. In 1482, 180 miles, and it would take them about a week. And then this one is just about Lodovico Sforza and how he kind of pushed Bona of Savoy aside because she was the regent, and he was like, no. Let's go to what else. I have 2 more tabs, it looks like. This one, yes, this is me. This is why it's good to be nosy.
But it's talking about how Leonardo, he always was just taking notes, and he had, at this time this became popular, have a little notepad connected to your belt so you could just jot something down in public. Or yeah, we have our iPhones now where we can do that. But one purpose of these notebooks was to record interesting scenes, especially those involving people and emotions, as you got about town hero, or as you go about town hero in one of them. Constantly observe, note, and consider the circumstances and behavior of men as they talk and quarrel, or laugh, or come to blows. And that was so when he did these psychological paintings, just having an understanding of humanity. Really fascinating. Y'all know I am more of a writer than a painter or anything like that. It's just understanding people. And there's something else about this book. This isn't a complaint or anything. It's just something that has stood out to me. We get the author's opinion of things a lot. It's not just straight, well, we do have the straight up facts, but we get his opinion as well. Like, we're talking about just this very chaotic page of notes. Some of there are some words on this page, but there's also drawings. There's a lot going on this page. There's one note on the page that seems disconnected from everything else. It is a recipe for making blonde brown hair dye. So it goes into the recipe, and then this may have been a notation in preparation for a court pageant, but it is more likely, I think, that the recipe is a rare, intimate jotting, and Leonardo was deep into his 30s by now. Perhaps he was resisting going gray. So just little things like that of the author's opinion. In the biography I read last month, we didn't get that. That's why I made note of it this month, because that's not really something that I have got before. But we are going to go into the weekly wrap-up. I have not read over 100 pages any day this week. I've read over 90 pages every day this week, but I haven't hit the 100 page mark yet. I haven't hauled any books, and I don't think I will over the weekend, but you never know, stuff could happen. It could be very fun to haul a book, knock on wood. And then for the sneak peek for next week's vlog, we will most likely still be reading Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson. I think there's a chance that we could finish it next week, but I really do not know. But this will be the book that I will be reading in next week's vlog. If you made it through this whole video, leave a green emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!